What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Board, checking out the brand new Galaxy Note 7. This is Samsung's most important flagship phone of the year and brings a lot of new features and a great new design. So the Note 7 really picks up on most of the specs and designs of the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge and kind of combines them together while retaining the S Pen stylus. So this brings a bunch of new features to the Note series, such as a curved edge to the display which narrows the grip of the phone. We also get water resistance for the first time on the Note series. New is an iris scanner. This is the first for any smartphone and it works surprisingly well. And for the first time, Samsung has added a USB-C connector. So getting to the box, some very nice details here. You'll see the S Pen sort of embossed on the side, and along the back you'll find all the specs for the phone. So we will have to crack into the seal to open up the box, and once you open up the box, inside you'll find this really nice blue color, which is a great complement to the coral blue phone I have here. So I want to save the best for last, so let's set the Note 7 aside and get all of the accessories out of the way, and there's quite a bit of them. First up, underneath the phone is a box containing our paperwork and a SIM ejection tool. And of course, this will vary depending on which carrier you pick up your phone from. Next up, we get a set of headphones from Samsung. This is a familiar design with an in-ear style, which includes an inline remote control and microphone and swappable ear tips, and it does come in this nice carrying case. Also included is Samsung's adaptive fast charging system. So this works with the included USB-C cable. Now, because we have USB-C and tons of Samsung accessories that use micro USB, they have included two adapters, which work with all of those accessories. And as always, we get a set of replacement pen nibs for the S Pen and a removal and installation tool. And finally, let's get to the phone wrapped in plastic so we can go ahead and peel all this off. Now, this is the coral blue color. It's also available in titanium, gold, or onyx black. So next up, let's take a close look at the hardware design, and it's really stunning, especially in this contrasting gold and blue color. Now, of course, the display is a big story here because it curves around the edges, and that definitely provides a nice narrow grip. And because the phone is so rounded, the phone feels fantastic in the hand, feels nothing like the previous Notes you've had, which felt more chunky or more boxy. This feels a lot more like a conventional smartphone like the Galaxy S7. So once again, built into the back of this phone is fast wireless charging, in addition to Android Pay, NFC, as well as Samsung Pay and all those features that we've seen before. The camera system is the same one from the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge, so that's 12 megapixels with an f1.7 aperture, with face detection, autofocus, optical image stabilization, and an LED flash. Also next to that LED flash is a heart rate monitor, which is used with Samsung Health. So along the edge of the phone, you won't find any of those chamfers, just a smooth continuous surface matching the glass and metal frame. So along the right side, we'll find a power button. Along the left side, we'll find our volume controls. Along the top of the phone, we'll find a micro SD card slot and nano SIM tray. So SD has finally returned to the Note series with this generation. Now, if you look at the tray itself, it does have a gasket around it. That's part of the waterproofing. Now, unfortunately, the Note 7 does not support adaptable storage, so you cannot use the SD card to expand internal storage, but you do get 64 gigs standard. Along the bottom edge, we still have our headphone jack, a USB-C connector, which again is a first for a Samsung phone. We also have our single loudspeaker, which is waterproofed with this generation. And just like the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge speaker, which is also waterproof, it sounds about the same, which is to say it doesn't sound very good. It's a little tinny, and for some reason, voices sound very robotic, as if the audio is overprocessed on this phone. And of course, we have our S Pen stylus, which has been color matched to the design of this phone, and it's really nice. Now, just like the previous generation, the S Pen is ejected by pressing on the button and pulling it out. And this time, it can't be inserted incorrectly, so it will block you from inserting it backwards, so that issue is now resolved. So for the most part, the S Pen design is very similar to the previous generation, but it is a little shorter, and the S Pen nib is definitely narrower. And the other nice tweak here is that the button along the side now acts as an eraser, so if you want to erase whatever you've written, just hold the button down. And of course, the S Pen stylus itself is also waterproof, so you can use this underwater. So getting to my favorite part of this phone, and that is the display. This is a 5.7-inch Quad HD Super AMOLED display with an adaptive brightness setting that can boost the brightness of the display to over 1000 nits in bright sunlight conditions, and it definitely works. So if you take this outside and cover up the sensor in a bright sunlight day and then take your hand off it, you can see it respond very noticeably. So this is a great phone outdoors in terms of visibility. Down below, returning once again, is Samsung's fingerprint scanner, which is a little slow on this device. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe software updates will improve this in the future, but it's definitely slower than other competing flagships flagship smartphones. And of course, once again, we have our backlit Android navigation keys. Now toward the top of the phone, we also get some new features, but of course we get some old ones as well, including an earpiece, which is now waterproof. It could be a little louder, but it's a decent sounding earpiece nonetheless. We also get a very wide angle 5 megapixel quad HD camera with an f1.7 aperture. Definitely one of the best front facing cameras you can get today, and it's basically the same one that's also on the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge. A new system up here is the iris scanner, and that combines an infrared light to light your face and a separate camera for reading your irises. Now this technology actually works extremely well, although it's not as reliable as a fingerprint scanner. Now this works basically the same way as a fingerprint scanner, but instead of just holding your finger to the home button, you actually have to swipe up on the lock screen. So you have to wake up the lock screen, swipe up, and then it scans for your face. And if it can't see your face right away, it'll actually give you a display showing you your face in relation to the camera. So then you line up your eyes to the iris scanner. Now for the most part, this works very well. Now because I wear glasses, I really don't use this feature at all because it's just not reliable enough. But if you're outdoors and it's cold and you're wearing gloves, I definitely see where this feature is useful, especially where I live. The good news here is that you can use both the iris scanner and the fingerprint scanner simultaneously, so you can choose one or the other. So I don't think there's any harm in setting up the iris scanner, even if you don't plan to use it very frequently. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the first Note to be IP68 certified, like a lot of Samsung devices. So that means it's dust proof and water resistant up to 1.5 meters at 30 minutes. So don't take it swimming, but it is splash and submersion resistant. So when it comes to our specs, the Note 7 gets 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of onboard storage. But when it comes to our CPUs, things get a little complicated, and that's because we have 2 options depending on where you are in the world. So in the US, most of the phones are coming with a Snapdragon 820 with an Adreno 530 GPU. In other parts of the world, you're getting the Samsung Exynos 8890 octa-core processor with a Mali T880 GPU. So for the most part, the Adreno 530 on the Snapdragon is better for graphics and gaming performance, while the Exynos seems to have an edge on overall CPU speed. So for the most part, both phones are definitely very powerful. And in my case, because I have the Snapdragon 820, which is pretty standard for 2016 flagship smartphones, we get pretty predictable Geekbench scores, which is on the high end today, but definitely not breaking any new ground. So when it comes to day-to-day performance, I think most people are going to be very satisfied with it because it's a very smooth operating phone and it's able to handle all of its features really well. But if you're used to a near stock Android experience without all of these features, it definitely doesn't feel as fast, especially when loading apps or loading some of the features or navigating around the interface. It just doesn't feel as quick and snappy as I would like to see. The Note 7 is packing a fairly large battery, 3500 versus 3000 from the Note 5, so that's a pretty big jump. So in terms of battery life, I'm seeing about 6 hours of on-screen time at maximum brightness. That's about an hour better than the typical smartphone, which usually does around 5 hours at best. In terms of the camera's quality, this is one of the best cameras I've tested on a smartphone to date. It's quick to launch, quick to focus, and quick to snap a photograph. It's always ready to go and produces outstanding images in a variety of lighting conditions. Images find focus accurately with crisp detail and balanced exposure, so the camera doesn't wash out highlights or underexpose shadows. With such a wide aperture, the camera really does produce some of the most professional photos I've seen in a smartphone without obvious overprocessing or softening. The camera does have a very shallow depth of field, which creates beautiful images, but it also means you have to spend more time monitoring your focus points to make sure you're focusing on what you want. Low light is where the camera really stands out with excellent detail and exposure while preserving color and saturation, which is where most smartphone cameras struggle. Video quality is also outstanding on this phone with optical image stabilization and high bitrate 4K video recording. So you're able to achieve some of the best looking 4K video you can get on a smartphone today. We do have continuous autofocusing on this camera and it's really smooth and inobtrusive. So you don't have the hunting around like you typically see with these large aperture lenses. So that makes handheld 4K video on this phone really outstanding. So digging into the software, of course, there's a lot going on with a Samsung phone, and that starts right on the lock screen. So we have our always on display, which is currently showing my date and time and battery status in addition to my notification badges. So if I want to access those, I just double tap and then I have to unlock my phone. I can use whatever method I prefer here. So this takes me right to the app that's pushing the notification. And of course, if you want to see more, just double tap on those notifications and it expands it out. But you notice there is another icon here, and that is a note. So this allows us to pin notes right to the lock screen. This works with the S Pen. So if I eject the S Pen, I can jot a note down right on the lock screen without leaving it. So let me just do what I just did, which is test, draw a little doodle there, click pin, and this will save it to the lock screen. So if I go back to the lock screen, just double tap it, and I have quick access to it without unlocking the device. And of course, you can save this to your Notes app as well, so it's always there. Now, of course, this screen is highly customizable, and you can see that it acts as a screensaver, so it moves around on the screen so it doesn't burn in. So we're gonna have to go to settings to customize this. Go to our settings from drop down, and if you go to your display settings, we have our always on display, which you can turn on and off. So if we turn this on and take a look at our layouts, you can see all the layouts that are available. So you get different clocks. If you're on a dual clock setup, you can pick that, and you can customize these layouts as well. So for example, let me go with the default layout here. We can change the color. So if you want to change the color of the clock, you can do that as well. And if you want to change the background, you can add that as well. So let's go and change this background, click apply. And now if you go to the lock screen, you can see the always on display is a lot more colorful. There's a few other things you can do here as well. So if you want to turn off your notifications so you don't see them on the lock screen, you can do that as well. You can also change the content that's displayed if you want your calendar or if you just want an image. So if you like one of those wallpapers that we've seen before, you can apply that as well. You won't see anything else besides that wallpaper though. You can also schedule this. So this is only on during certain parts of the day. So if you don't want this on at night, you can schedule this for start and end time. Now in terms of the lock screen, we can also quickly launch into our phone dialer or the camera app or expand out our notifications. And again, this is also modifiable under settings. So if you go to settings here, go to our lock screen, and then we can change our info and app shortcuts. So if you want to dual clock, you can turn that on. If you want to add your owner information, you can do that, or change the app shortcuts. So if you want to change the left or right shortcut, you can pick from any app you want. Another feature appearing for the first time on the Note 7 is the Edge screen. So you can invoke it by swiping across on the tab along the side, which you can reposition here. So in terms of these Edge screens, right now I have the People Edge, Task Edge, my News Edge, the Weather, and the Apps Edge. And I can also tap on these icons down here to quickly jump right to them. So this allows me to quickly access things like the YouTube app, and that's all accessible from anywhere in the system interface. So for example, if I'm within an app, this is still available to me. So I can swipe in here to access, for example, the calculator app. So it takes me right to it. Now, of course, this is highly customizable. We can go to our settings here, and we can go up to the handle settings to reposition this handle. So I can change the location along the side where this is, or I can switch to the left side if I want. I can change the transparency or the size of the handle as well from medium to small. Now, of course, you can also just turn this off if you don't want this on at all, and you can add or remove some of these Edge screens. So a lot of them come pre-installed, and you can go ahead and select them if you want. Some of them you can edit as well. So for example, with the Apps Edge, I can go to Edit and change the apps that appear on the Apps Edge. You can also download additional ones from the App Store. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, and there's a huge selection of them now. Now, one of my favorites is the People Edge, so this allows me to quickly access my favorite contacts for calling them or sending them a message. The other thing here is that each person gets its own color. So if your phone is laying face down and you're receiving a phone call or a message, the edge of the screen will light up and strobe in that color to let you know that that person is calling. And if you miss a phone call or a message from one of those contacts, you get this little color match tab along the side, which you can swipe in on to see the information. The Edge screen can also be used on the lock screen, and we have something called Edge Feeds. So if you rub the side of the phone, this will invoke Edge Feeds. This will reorientate depending on how you're holding the phone, and this works on both sides of the phone. So if you want it on the left side, you just have to rub the left side to get to it. Now, this you can cycle through, so you can swipe across them to navigate through those Edge Feeds. So I have my notifications and I have my news feed. Now, you can customize this under settings. So if you go to settings here and go to display, we have our Edge screen. So this is our Edge screen settings. So this allows us to turn off the Edge screen entirely if we don't want it. And then we have our Edge feeds, which you can also turn off. Now, of course, you can reorder these if you want, and you can change the timeout here from 15 seconds all the way up to 10 minutes. Now, I think a little more useful is the night clock. So if we go to night clock, we can turn this on, and this is something we can schedule. So I've set this for 12 p.m. so we can take a look at it right now, and you can change the position of it from left or right side. Now, when this is turned on, you get this very dim clock along the side, which also turns off the always on display, and you can see your battery status in addition to the date and time. So the big news with any Note phone is the S Pen stylus. So as soon as I eject it, we get this Air Command utility that pops up. So this has a lot of our S Pen features, and you can hide it away or bring it forward just by tapping the icon. Now, we have lots of settings here, including that floating icon. So if you want to turn this off, you can, and if you want to re-invoke it, you just press the button along the side to bring it up again. So one of the S Pen utilities is the new Notes app. So this has been expanded with a lot of features like voice memo, but what I'm going to show you is the S Pen toolbox. So we have different pen tips or pencil tips, marker tips, or whatever, and you can select them. And then we can also choose a different color, or we can go to the color wheel and select something else and change the intensity. So let's click done here, click close, and we can start writing our message. So as you write, you actually get some auditory feedback as if you're writing on actual paper, which is kind of neat. Now, one of the most talked about features is Translate. So right now I'm on a German website. If I hover my pen tip over a word, this will translate that word for me. And I can go up here to have it speak the word to me.
Maßnahmenkatalog.
So let's try another word here. Gelten, be valid.
Gelten.
Next up, under Smart Select, we have this new animated GIF option. So this allows us to actually record GIFs out of video. It doesn't have to be video, it could be anything, but it makes most sense with video. So for example, I have my YouTube video up here. I can record in high quality or standard quality. If I click play on that video here, I can go ahead and start recording this. And this will record up to 15 seconds for the GIF, and of course I can stop it before that. So we're going to click stop there. This will save it. You can see the playback here. We also get magnify, which is pretty self-explanatory. Basically, it's a magnifying glass, and you can change the intensity here, so you can go from 150 to 300%. Another interesting feature is glance. So this will minimize the window you're currently looking at so you can do other things. So it keeps it in the corner, and you can move it around. And if you want to glance back to it, just hover your cursor over that window. Now, of course, with the S Pen, you do get a handwriting keyboard built in. You just have to select it. So if you click and hold on this Option key down here, which can either be the voice keyboard, the clipboard, your emoticon keyboard, the keyboard settings, or our handwriting keyboard, which will transcribe what we handwrite. So for example, it's pretty forgiving and it's fairly fast. You can see it had no trouble recognizing the punctuation and my horrible handwriting. Now this keyboard has improved since I last used it, so I have this little cursor I can drag and drop around. So if I need to make an edit, I can drag and drop it, add a space, write another word in here like short. See if it recognizes it. Pretty good here. I can add a space. And then I can also cross it out to delete it if I want, or just use the delete key down here. Or if I want to change this word, I can just write over it, like trial. Now, needless to say, there are tons of options for the S Pen stylus under Advanced Features and S Pen. Not going to go through all of them because most of them are pretty familiar, such as Air View. So if you hover the tip of the pen over certain features like your calendar, your photo gallery, you'll get a little pop-up preview. It also works with links. You can also scroll through your website using the S Pen stylus. We also have Direct Pen Input. So if you want to handwrite your text into text boxes, you have this option, which again, you can turn on and off. So just to show you how this works, if you go to the Chrome browser, hover the tip of the pen over a text box here, you can actually go ahead and start handwriting this in instead. So if I want to write CNN.com, it should recognize it. There we go. We also have our detachment option. So when you eject the S Pen, it automatically pops out Air Command by default, but instead you could have it create a note or just do nothing at all. So when it comes to the main home screen interface, they have made some changes here in terms of the designs. Although the layout is pretty familiar, the icon pack and the colors are more consistent. So the icons are more rounded and the colors are a little more even and not quite as stark and bright. Now, if you swipe to the right, we get to Flipboard Briefing, which is our news aggregator. So we've seen this before, and you can modify this. So you can turn off certain feeds. So if you don't want business news, you can turn that off, and of course you can go up to settings to either turn this off or turn it back on. So if you turn this off, it disappears from your home screen and you won't see that panel anymore. Of course, you can also modify the home screens by pinching in and out. So if you want to turn on Flipboard Briefing that way, you can select your home screen by selecting the home icon above each screen, and you can remove them or rearrange them. We also have our wallpapers, and we have lots of wallpapers to pick from. We have some recommended wallpapers you can download, or you can go with the ones that have come pre-installed with your device, and there's lots of them, and they do have some motion effects. So if I go ahead and select this, you can apply it to the home screen here. And then you have the option to turn on the motion effect, which is actually off by default. Let's set wallpaper here. And it's a pretty subtle effect. So you can see when the device moves around here, the wallpaper sort of moves with it. Now for some of these wallpapers, the motion effect on the lock screen is actually different than the home screen. So you can see with this particular wallpaper, this actually color shifts as you move it around. Now you're not just limited to wallpapers, so you can theme out your entire interface. So we have wallpapers, themes, and icons. So you can select different icon packs. So you have to download those from the store, and there's lots of them to look at. Or you can just select themes, which will change everything from the fonts, the sound profile, wallpapers, and the icon pack. And there's a lot to pick from, and some of them are paid and some of them are free. So if you want to select one of these, you can go ahead and download it. So for example, you have a gold phone, this might be the perfect one for you. We also have our widget interface, so you can cycle through all your available widgets, and then we have our screen grid. So 5x5 is default, but if you want a more spacious one, you can go with 4x4 or 4x5. Now, one of the ways of creating a more consistent looking UI design is by applying frames to all of the apps so they look like the rest of the system apps. So for example, the third-party apps are either rounded off or they've applied these frames around them. And you can turn this off if you don't like it. You have to go to Settings, go to Display, go to